The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, an essay by Langston Hughes, 1926. One of the most promising of the young Negro poets said to me once, "I want to be a poet, not a Negro poet, meaning, I believe, I want to write like a white poet, meaning, subconsciously, I would like to be a white poet, meaning, behind that, I would like to be white." And I was sorry the young man said that, for no great poet has ever been afraid of being himself. And I doubted then that, with his desire to run away spiritually from his race, this boy would ever be a great poet. But this is the mountain standing in the way of any true Negro art in America. This urge within the race toward whiteness, the desire to pour racial individuality into the mold of American standardization, and to be as little Negro and as much American as possible. But let us look at the immediate background of this young poet. His family is of what I suppose one would call the Negro middle class, people who are by no means rich, yet never uncomfortable nor hungry, smug, contented, respectable folk, members of the Baptist Church. The father goes to work every morning. He is a chief steward at a large white club. The mother sometimes does fancy sewing or supervises parties for the rich families of the town. The children go to a mixed school. In the home, they read white papers and magazines, and the mother often says, "Don't be like Negroes," when the children are bad. A frequent phrase from the father is, "Look how well a white man does things." And so the word white comes to be unconsciously a symbol of all virtues. It holds for the children beauty, morality, and money. The whisper of, "I want to be white," runs silently through their minds. This young poet's home is, I believe, a fairly typical home of the colored middle class. One sees immediately how difficult it would be for an artist born in such a home to interest himself in interpreting the beauty of his own people. He is never taught to see that beauty. He is taught rather not to see it, or if he does, to be ashamed of it when it is not according to Caucasian patterns. For racial culture, the home of a self-styled high-class Negro has nothing better to offer. Instead, there will perhaps be more aping of things white than in a less cultured or less wealthy home. The father is perhaps a doctor, lawyer, landowner, or politician. The mother may be a social worker or a teacher, or she may do nothing and have a maid. Father is often dark, but he has usually married the lightest woman he could find. The family attend a fashionable church, where few really colored faces are to be found, and they themselves draw a color line. In the North, they go to white theaters and white movies, and in the South, they have at least 2 cars and house like white folks. Nordic manners, Nordic faces, Nordic hair, Nordic art, if any, and an Episcopal heaven. A very high mountain indeed for the would-be racial artist to climb in order to discover himself and his people. But then there are the low-down folks, the so-called common element, and they are the majority. May the Lord be praised. The people who have their nip of gin on Saturday nights and are not too important to themselves or to the community, or too well-fed or too learned to watch the lazy world go round. They live on 7th Street in Washington or State Street in Chicago, and they do not particularly care whether they are like white folks or anybody else. Their joy runs, bang, into ecstasy. Their religion soars to a shout. Work maybe a little today, rest a little tomorrow, play a while, sing a while, oh, let's dance. These common people are not afraid of spirituals, as for a long time their more intellectual brethren were, and jazz is their child. They furnish a wealth of colorful, distinctive material for any artist, because they still hold their own individuality in the face of American standardizations. And perhaps these common people will give to the world its truly great Negro artist, the one who is not afraid to be himself. Whereas the better class Negro would tell the artist what to do, the people at least let him alone when he does appear, and they are not ashamed of him, if they know he exists at all. And they accept what beauty is their own without question. Certainly there is, for the American Negro artist who can escape the restrictions the more advanced among his own group would put upon him, a great field of unused material ready for his art. Without going outside his race, and even among the better classes with their white culture and conscious American manners, but still Negro enough to be different, there is sufficient matter to furnish a black artist with a lifetime of creative work. And when he chooses to touch on the relations between Negroes and whites in this country, with their innumerable overtones and undertones, surely and especially for literature and the drama, there is an inexhaustible supply of themes at hand. To these, the Negro artist can give his racial individuality, his heritage of rhythm and warmth, and his incongruous humor that so often, as in the blues, becomes ironic laughter mixed with tears. But let us look again at the mountain. A prominent Negro clubwoman in Philadelphia paid $11 to hear Raquel Meller sing Andalusian popular songs. But she told me a few weeks before she would not think of going to hear that woman, Clara Smith, a great black artist, sing Negro folk songs. And many an upper-class Negro church, even now, would not dream of employing a spiritual in its services. The drab melodies in white folks' hymn books are much to be preferred. We want to worship the Lord correctly and quietly. We don't believe in shouting. Let's be dull like the Nordics, they say, in effect. The road for the serious black artist, then, who would produce a racial art, is most certainly rocky, and the mountain is high. Until recently, he received almost no encouragement for his work from either white or colored people. The fine novels of Chestnut go out of print with neither race noticing their passing. The quaint charm and humor of Dunbar's dialect verse brought to him in his day largely the same kind of encouragement one would give a sideshow freak. A colored man writing poetry? How odd! Or a clown? How amusing! The present vogue in things Negro, although it may do as much harm as good for the budding colored artist, has at least done this. It has brought him forcibly to the attention of his own people, among whom for so long, unless the other race had noticed him beforehand, he was a prophet with little honor. I understand that Charles Gilpin acted for years in Negro theaters without any special acclaim from his own, but when Broadway gave him 8 curtain calls, Negroes too began to beat a tin path in his honor. I know a young colored writer, a manual worker by day, who had been writing well for the colored magazines for some years. But it was not until he recently broke into the white publications and his first book was accepted by a prominent New York publisher that the best Negroes in his city took the trouble to discover that he lived there. Then almost immediately, they decided to give a grand dinner for him. But the society ladies were careful to whisper to his mother that perhaps she'd better not come. They were not sure she would have an evening gown. The Negro artist works against an undertow of sharp criticism and misunderstanding from his own group, and unintentional bribes from the whites. Oh, be respectable, write about nice people, show how good we are, say the Negroes. Be stereotyped, don't go too far, don't shatter our illusions about you, don't amuse us too seriously, we will pay you, say the whites. Both would have told Jean Toomer not to write Cain. The colored people did not praise it. The white people did not buy it. Most of the colored people who did read Cain hate it. They are afraid of it. Although the critics gave it good reviews, the public remained indifferent. Yet, accepting the work of Du Bois, Cain contains the finest prose written by a Negro in America, and like the singing of Robeson, it is truly racial. But in spite of the Nordicized Negro intelligentsia and the desires of some white editors, we have an honest American Negro literature already with us. Now I await the rise of the Negro theater. Our folk music, having achieved worldwide fame, offers itself to the genius of the great individual American Negro composer who is to come. And within the next decade, I expect to see the work of a growing school of colored artists who paint and model the beauty of dark faces and create with new technique the expressions of their own soul world. And the Negro dancers who will dance like flame, and the singers who will continue to carry our songs to all who listen. They will be with us in even greater numbers tomorrow. Most of my own poems are racial in theme and treatment, derived from the life I know. In many of them, I try to grasp and hold some of the meanings and rhythms of jazz. I am as sincere as I know how to be in these poems, and yet, after every reading, I answer questions like these from my own people. Do you think Negroes should always write about Negroes? I wish you wouldn't read some of your poems to white folks. How do you find anything interesting in a place like a cabaret? Why do you write about black people? You aren't black. What makes you do so many jazz poems? But jazz to me is one of the inherent expressions of Negro life in America. The eternal tom-tom beating in the Negro soul, the tom-tom of revolt against weariness in a white world, a world of subway trains and work, work, work. The tom-tom of joy and laughter and pain is swallowed in a smile. Yet the Philadelphia clubwoman is ashamed to say that her race created it, and she does not like me to write about it. The old subconscious white is best runs through her mind. Years of study under white teachers, a lifetime of white books, pictures, and papers, and white manners, morals, and Puritan standards made her dislike the spirituals. And now she turns up her nose at jazz and all its manifestations. Likewise, almost everything else distinctly racial. She doesn't care for the Vinold Rice portraits of Negroes because they are too Negro. She does not want a true picture of herself from anybody. She wants the artist to flatter her, to make the white world believe that all Negroes are as smug and as near white in soul as she wants to be. But, to my mind, it is the duty of the younger Negro artist, if he accepts any duties at all from outsiders, to change through the force of his art that old whispering, "I want to be white," hidden in the aspirations of his people, to, "Why should I want to be white? I am a Negro, and beautiful." So I am ashamed for the black poet who says, "I want to be a poet, not a Negro poet," as though his own racial world were not as interesting as any other world. I am ashamed, too, for the colored artist who runs from the painting of Negro faces to the painting of sunsets, after the manner of the academicians, because he fears the strange unwhiteness of his own features. An artist must be free to choose what he does, certainly, but he must also never be afraid to do what he might choose. Let the blare of Negro jazz bands and the bellowing voice of Bessie Smith singing the blues penetrate the closed ears of the colored near-intellectuals until they listen and perhaps understand. Let Paul Robeson singing Waterboy, and Rudolph Fisher writing about the streets of Harlem, and Gene Toomer holding the heart of Georgia in his hands, and Aaron Douglas drawing strange black fantasies cause the smug Negro middle class to turn from their white, respectable, ordinary books and papers to catch a glimpse of their own beauty. We younger Negro artists who create now intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful, and ugly too. The tom-tom cries and the tom-tom laughs. If colored people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, their displeasure doesn't matter either. We build our temples for tomorrow, strong as we know how, and we stand on top of the mountain, free within ourselves.